Duke fans. We need to have a serious conversation because what happened in that Elite 8 game is somehow getting even worse. For the last week, everybody blamed one young player for the turnover that led to the most painful shot of the season, the play that ended everything, the pass that got intercepted, the sequence that turned a trip to the Final Four into one of the most devastating losses in program history. But now there's video, and if you look closely, it changes everything. The new angle appears to show that the player everybody was blaming was actually doing exactly what he was told to do from the bench. The head coach first signaled to hold the ball, then motioned for the pass. The idea was to get an easy basket and finish the game right there. Instead, it turned into disaster. And honestly, that's why so many fans are starting to ask a question nobody wanted to ask a year ago. Is this becoming a pattern? Because this wasn't just a random collapse. This team was up 15 at halftime, up 19 in the second half, they were 20 minutes away from the Final Four, and yet somehow they lost 73-72 on a last-second three. Do you realize how historic that collapse was? Teams seeded number 1 were 134-0 in NCAA tournament history when leading by at least 15 at halftime, 134-0 until now, and that's what makes this so hard to ignore. We've seen this movie before. We saw the collapse against Houston. We've seen double-digit leads disappear in the regular season. We've seen late-game possessions become chaotic, rushed, and completely out of rhythm. At some point, when the same thing keeps happening over and over again, fans stop blaming the players and start looking at the man standing on the sideline. Now look, I still believe in Jon Scheyer. I think he recruits at an elite level. I think he understands what this program is supposed to be. But if we're being honest as real fans, he has to answer for these moments. Great coaches don't just build great teams, they finish games. And right now, this program is still searching for that killer instinct in the biggest moments. But here's the crazy part. While everybody is arguing about the collapse, a massive opportunity may have just opened up that could completely change next season. Because one of the biggest names in the transfer portal is suddenly being linked to Duke. A dominant shot blocker, a defensive monster, the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, a player who could step in immediately and completely transform the front court after everything this team is about to lose. With multiple key pieces likely heading to the NBA, this roster is going to look very different next season. And if Duke can land this transfer, we might be talking about the missing piece that keeps this team in the national title conversation. The fit honestly makes too much sense. Duke needs size. Duke needs rim protection. Duke needs someone who can erase mistakes defensively and bring toughness inside. And this guy checks every single box. So today we're breaking down the new video from that final possession, whether the criticism toward Jon Scheyer is actually fair, why this collapse could define his reputation moving forward, and why one transfer target could completely change the future of Duke basketball. But before we get into all that, I need to know who the real fans are. If you bleed Duke blue no matter what, smash that like button, subscribe to Duke Basketball Update, and help us hit 300 subscribers. This channel just got started, and we're building the best community of Duke fans on YouTube. Now let's talk about what really happened. Let's go back to the final seconds. Duke was up by 1 point. The Blue Devils had the ball. All they needed to do was protect it, make free throws, and survive. Instead, Caden Boozer threw a pass that was intercepted, UConn pushed the ball up the floor, and Braylon Mullins hit an unbelievable 35-footer at the buzzer to end Duke's season. At first, most people blamed Caden, and honestly, in the moment, I did too. I think a lot of us did. Because when you see a turnover like that with the season on the line, your first reaction is, why would he make that pass? But now we know why. A new angle from the Duke bench shows Jon Scheyer first motioning for Boozer to hold the ball. Then, just seconds later, Scheyer changed his mind and signaled for him to throw the ball forward toward teammates cutting near the basket. The idea was probably simple: get an easy dunk or layup, go up 3, and end the game. But instead, the pass was deflected. UConn got the ball, and the rest is a nightmare every Duke fan will remember forever. Now, let me be clear. I understand what Jon Scheyer was trying to do. In theory, if the pass gets through and Duke scores, everyone calls it a brilliant aggressive decision. But in that situation, with only seconds left, with your season on the line, and with a freshman point guard under enormous pressure, I think it was the wrong call. You have to protect the ball. You have to trust the free throw game. You cannot give UConn even the slightest chance, especially after Duke had already blown a 19-point lead. At that point, the only thing that mattered was surviving, and that is why so many fans are now frustrated with Scheyer, because it feels like Duke tried to make the home run play instead of the safe play. And when you are leading late in the Elite Eight, you do not need a home run. You just need to close the game. And that's what makes this even worse. This wasn't just a normal loss, this was one of the worst collapses in NCAA tournament history. Duke led by 15 points at halftime. The Blue Devils led by as many as 19, and before this game, teams that led by at least 15 at halftime as a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament were 134-0, 134-0, until Duke. That is almost impossible. The Blue Devils scored 44 points in the first half, then only 28 in the second. The offense became stagnant. The turnovers increased. UConn started dominating in transition and scoring off mistakes, and somehow a game Duke controlled for nearly 35 minutes slipped away. As a Duke fan, that is what hurts the most, because this team was good enough to make the Final Four. Honestly, I think they were good enough to win the national championship. They had Cameron Boozer playing like a superstar, they had depth, they had defense, they had size, and yet they still found a way to lose. This is the question nobody wants to ask, but we have to ask it. Is this becoming a pattern under Jon Scheyer? Because unfortunately, this is not the first time. Last season, Duke collapsed late against Houston in the Final Four. This season, there were multiple games where Duke had big leads and nearly gave them away, or actually did give them away. And now, in the biggest game of the season, it happened again. At some point when the same thing keeps happening, it stops feeling random. It starts feeling like a real weakness. Now, I am not saying Jon Scheyer should be fired. Absolutely not. Let's be honest. Scheyer has still done an incredible job overall. He recruits at an elite level. He has kept Duke at the top of college basketball. He wins a lot of games. But there is a difference between building a great team and closing out championship moments. Right now, Scheyer has not proven that he can consistently do that. And until he does, people are going to keep questioning him. Fair or unfair, that is the reality when you coach at Duke. At Duke, Elite Eights are not enough. Being close is not enough. The expectation is Final Fours and championships. The hardest part of all this is knowing how much this team cared. After the game, Jon Scheyer said the locker room was unlike anything he had ever experienced. You could see it on the players' faces. Cameron Boozer, who somehow scored 27 points while playing through fractures around his eye, said, "I'm hurting right now, we're all hurting." And honestly, every Duke fan feels exactly the same way, because this team gave us so much hope. And now, with Boozer expected to leave for the NBA draft, this might have been our last chance to see this group together. That's what makes the loss so devastating, not just because Duke lost, but because they were so close. Now I want to hear from you, Duke Nation. Do you think Jon Scheyer deserves the blame for the turnover and the collapse? Or do you think fans are being too hard on him? And most importantly, do you still believe Scheyer is the right coach to lead Duke back to a championship? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Duke Nation, we might already have the first massive transfer portal rumor of the offseason. And if this actually happens, Duke could be building another national championship contender. Because one of the biggest names in the entire transfer portal, Kansas star Flory Bidunga, is suddenly being linked to Duke. And not just linked. Some people around college basketball are already saying Duke might be the favorite. If Jon Scheyer can pull this off, it would completely change the Blue Devils front court for next season. We're talking about one of the best defensive big men in America, a shot blocker, a rebounder, a guy who could immediately step in and replace Patrick Ngongba and give Duke exactly what it needs in the paint. So today, we're breaking down why Flory Bidunga to Duke is suddenly gaining momentum, why the fit makes so much sense, and whether Jon Scheyer can actually win this recruiting battle. But before we get started, if you love Duke basketball, hit that like button, subscribe to Duke Basketball Update, and help us hit our goal of 300 subscribers. We are getting closer every single day, and if you want non-stop Duke transfer portal news, recruiting updates, and off-season analysis, this is the place to be. Now let's get into it. First of all, if you don't know much about Flory Bidunga yet, let me tell you right now, this is not just another transfer portal player, this is arguably the best player currently available in the portal. Bidunga is coming off a huge season at Kansas, where he established himself as one of the most dominant defensive big men in college basketball. He won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and he did it because he completely changed games around the rim. He protected the basket, he blocked shots, he controlled the glass. He gave Kansas a physical presence that very few teams had. Last season, Bidunga averaged 13.8 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 7 blocks per game while shooting over 64% from the field. Those are elite numbers. And honestly, they are exactly the kind of numbers Duke is going to need next year after losing so much size and production in the front court. Let's be honest, Duke's front court next season is going to look completely different. Cameron Boozer is almost certainly heading to the NBA. Patrick Ngongba is expected to leave too. Malik Brown is out of eligibility. That means Duke could lose its top 3 frontcourt players in one off season. That is a huge problem. Now yes, Duke has some talent coming in. 5-star freshman Cameron Williams is arriving, and I'm really excited about him. At 7 feet tall, with his shooting ability and skill level, he has a chance to be special, but let's be realistic. Williams is probably more of a stretch 4 right now than a true center. He's not the kind of player you want battling with the strongest big men in the ACC every night as a freshman. Then there's Maxime Meyer, another talented recruit, but he feels more like a long-term project. So if Patrick Ngongba leaves, Duke desperately needs an experienced center, and not just any center. They need somebody who can protect the rim, rebound, defend and pick and roll coverage, and bring toughness to the paint. That is exactly what Flory Bidunga does. This is where it gets really interesting, because honestly, the fit between Duke and Bidunga feels almost too perfect. Jon Scheyer's defense works best when he has an elite rim protector in the middle. We saw that this season with Patrick Ngongba, and we also saw what happened when Ngongba got hurt. During the ACC tournament and the beginning of the NCAA tournament, Duke just wasn't the same defensively without him. The Blue Devils struggled more protecting the rim. They looked less physical. Opponents attack the paint more confidently. That tells you how important the center position is in Scheyer's system. Now imagine replacing Ngongba with someone who might be even more advanced defensively. That's what makes Bidunga so exciting. He could immediately become the anchor of Duke's defense. And offensively, I think the pairing with Cameron Williams would be incredible. Williams could stretch the floor, knock down threes, and pull opposing big men away from the basket. Meanwhile, Bidunga could do all the dirty work inside. He could dominate the offensive glass, finish lobs, score around the rim, set screens, defend the paint. That combination could be one of the best front courts in the entire country. You'd have a modern stretch big next to a physical rim protector. Honestly, it reminds me a little bit of the kind of front court balance that wins championships in college basketball. Now here's the big question, can Duke actually get him? Right now there are already several schools being mentioned. Kansas could still convince him to stay. Kentucky is expected to be involved. Michigan is another possibility. Even North Carolina is reportedly being discussed. And Bidunga is also testing the NBA draft waters. So this is not going to be easy, but if you ask me, Duke has a real chance. Why? Because Duke can offer exactly what Bidunga should be looking for. A guaranteed starting role, a chance to play for a national championship, a coach who has a clear plan for him, and a system that perfectly fits his strengths. If I'm Bidunga, I look at Duke and I see an opportunity to be the missing piece. I see a team that already has talent on the perimeter, elite freshmen coming in, and a huge opening at center. I see a chance to raise my NBA stock by playing on one of the biggest stages in college basketball. And honestly, if Jon Scheyer wants him badly enough, I think Duke can win this battle. The biggest challenge is probably going to be NIL. The market for elite big men is exploding right now. Everybody wants a rim protecting center. That means Bidunga is going to cost a lot. But this is exactly the kind of player Duke cannot afford to miss. Because if the Blue Devils want to stay in the national title conversation after losing Cameron Boozer, this is the move they need to make. But now I want to hear from you, Duke Nation. Do you think Flory Bidunga would be the perfect replacement for Patrick Ngongba? And do you think Jon Scheyer can actually land him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and help us hit 300 subscribers here on Duke Basketball Update. We are going to have non-stop transfer portal coverage all off-season long, and trust me, this might only be the beginning, because if Duke lands Flory Bidunga, the Blue Devils might be right back in the national championship conversation. Go Duke!